Where are the women and children's rights that she stood for her life when it comes to women in Gaza, who now have nowhere to even have their periods, have their children, whose children are being exterminated before their eyes? Where are the children's rights? Children have nowhere to hide in Gaza. The hypocrisy is stunning, as it was with Barack Obama, who was himself a recipient of hundreds of thousands of dollars of money from AIPAC by the time he was elected president after spending just a short time in the Senate. I remember when Barack Obama was elected, before he was inaugurated, that's when Israel chose to launch the beginning of its succession of devastating assaults on Gaza. Operation Cast Lead, which left over 1,400 dead, 40,000 homes destroyed, and 100,000 homeless. And Obama said nothing about Operation Cast Lead. And when he was inaugurated, he sent the GBU bunker buster bombs, the 2,000-pound bombs, the howitzers, the tank shells. Barack Obama presided over the grisliest assaults on Gaza up until this point. Operation Pillar of Defense, over 150 killed, 300 homes destroyed, 1,700 left homeless. Operation Protective Edge, which I covered from the inside of Gaza. I saw it. I witnessed the destruction. I sat with those whose families were slaughtered. I sat in their destroyed homes. 2,200 killed, 17,000 families left homeless. Families, not people. 35,000 artillery shells of different types fired on Gaza after being delivered by the Obama administration, and 14,500 tank shells. What's Obama doing now? Has he said anything about this? Is he speaking out like Jimmy Carter so bravely did? Is he even like building homes for the homeless like Jimmy Carter did? No, his life is one giant luxury vacation. One week he's at a Springsteen concert, Michelle's playing tambourine. The next week he's having splash fights with billionaire Richard Branson at his private mansion. He's raking in the multi-million-dollar speaking fees from the big banks as the Clintons did. And he, like the Clintons and like Joe Biden's largest single donor, was Haim Saban, the one-issue guy whose issue is Israel. Who controls Biden's foreign policy? Is it Biden? Do you feel like he's in charge? Do you feel like he's, I don't know, the independent solicitor from the Justice Department said he wasn't really in charge enough to know about his own son's dealings with Burisma. So I wonder if he actually is capable of standing up to a cunning figure like Netanyahu. Tony Blinken's the man in charge. Tony Blinken is not just the Secretary of State. He's a veteran Democratic operative who forfeited all diplomatic leverage that the United States might have had over Israel in this conflict when he announced on his first trip to Israel that he was there, quote, as a Jew. Can you imagine a Muslim diplomat from the US going to a country like Pakistan and declaring he's there as a Muslim? What would happen to him or her? It would be a disaster. But Tony Blinken has been using this language throughout his career in order to get himself to where he is. Tony Blinken comes from Israel lobby royalty. His grandfather, Nathan, authored an influential study in the 1930s on the feasibility of Zionist colonization of Palestine. Those were the language he used in his study. He sponsored the study. Tony Blinken's father-in-law, the man who raised him, was Samuel Pisar, who was himself a kind of pro-Israel fixer for Francois Mitterrand in France. And he was the consigliere for Robert Maxwell, a Mossad agent who you all probably know well. Robert Maxwell's last call before he mysteriously fell off his yacht in the Mediterranean was to Tony Blinken's father-in-law, Samuel Pisar. Robert Maxwell was given a de facto state burial in Israel. And his daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, earned infamy as Jeffrey Epstein's wingwoman. Jeffrey Epstein, another person with likely unsavory ties to Israeli intelligence. At a 2007 AIPAC meeting, Tony Blinken declared that he inherited his, quote, commitment to Israel's strength through his family. And this has been the language and politics that he's used to climb the ladder in the Beltway. Right now, there's a protest encampment outside Tony Blinken's home. It's a 24/7 protest encampment. They're there rain or shine. I visited them 2 days ago. It was muddy. They were there in the mud. One of the women is a Palestinian refugee who actually experienced the Nakba in 1948. And they protest anytime Blinken's motorcade goes in or out, demanding a ceasefire. All they want is a ceasefire, and then they will leave. And they're outside a big mansion. I mean, he lives across the street from a home that was purchased by an LLC for $40 million, just to give you an idea of the wealth in Tony Blinken's bank account. Where did it come from? It came from, in many ways, a company called West Exec Advisors, where the Obama foreign policy team cooled their heels during the Trump administration. West Exec Advisors markets itself as a boutique consulting firm, and what they do is they help shepherd deals, hump in deals for the arms industry, for spy tech firms. Jen Psaki, who's now an MSNBC host, former press secretary, she got a deal through West Exec to consult for an Israeli spy tech company. And they would use their connections to make money for the arms industry, the spying industry, the same industries that are cashing in on the assault on Gaza and the Ukraine proxy war, which Tony Blinken and his team are supporting. Then you have Victoria Nuland. Well, before I get to Victoria Nuland, there's someone I've had direct encounters with, Matthew Miller at the State Department. He's the guy who's basically up there defending the Gaza policy of the Biden administration, which is to drop a few packages of aid in with one hand and drop thousands of bombs with the other, to put it crudely. Matthew Miller's the former spokesman for Robert Menendez, who is right behind Joe Biden as a historically top recipient of AIPAC money because he was the ranking chair on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. In fact, Bob Menendez's legal defense during his first corruption trial when he got off was funded by pro-Israel donors. Now Bob Menendez is going to jail for taking literal gold bars in his pockets from Egyptian lobbyists. The pro-Israel lobbyists were more elegant about it. Victoria Nuland has just resigned. She was Tony Blinken's underling assistant secretary of state. She's the former chief of staff to the great Democratic Party hero Dick Cheney. What? Yeah, she served in Republican Democratic administration. She is an arch neoconservative whose husband, Robert Kagan, wrote the Benevolent Hegemony essay with Bill Kristol, who is now supporting the Genocide Democrats through his various front organizations, which called for the United States to act as a benevolent dictator and take out rogue governments across the world, paving the path for the invasion of Iraq with its eyes on Iran. Victoria Nuland just resigned, leaving behind a legacy of the architect of the 2014 coup, which removed an elected president in Kiev and installed a US and NATO-backed government, paving the primrose path, as John Mearsheimer put it, to war with Russia. Victoria Nuland was famously recorded in a leaked recording deciding who would come into power after the Ukrainian government was removed in a color revolution. Give Yats the attaboy, she said, about billionaire Arseniy Yatsenyuk, and we'll keep Klitsch on the outside, referring to Vitaly Klitschko, who's now mayor of Kiev. She essentially controlled what happened in Ukraine after she handed out cookies in the Maidan Square with the US ambassador, Jeffrey Piat, to protesters who wanted a better Ukraine and rioters. I'm being told this is time. Well, I'm going to go 2 minutes over time and just talk about congressional leadership a little bit, because we have a historic person in Congress, Hakeem Jeffries, the first black congressional minority leader to bow before an apartheid state. Hakeem Jeffries is also one of the top recipients of AIPAC money. He's the son of a black radical named Leonard Jeffries. In 1992, Hakeem Jeffries published an op-ed for his college newspaper denouncing Clarence Thomas and Colin Powell as, quote, house Negroes and token blacks propped up by racist, affluent elements. Hey, none of us, I don't think any of us would argue with that. He even quoted Augusto Sandino, the Nicaraguan guerrilla leader who resisted the US Marine invasion of his country, to paint the US military as the policemen of Wall Street bankers. Fully agree with old Hakeem Jeffries. But 30 years later, Hakeem Jeffries, in a speech before a pro-Israel organization, unwittingly but appropriately channeled the segregationist former Alabama governor George Wallace, declaring Israel today, Israel tomorrow, Israel forever. Did he know he was quoting Wallace's most infamous statement? Clarence Thomas and Hakeem Jeffries are different, but who's more dangerous? Clarence Thomas revels in liberal America's contempt. He likes being called a house Negro by Democrats. He hates them. But Jeffries, he mimics the rhetorical techniques of Jesse Jackson and caters aggressively to the social concerns of the Democratic Party's donor class, not the grassroots. And in this way, he and many of his colleagues are arguably more effective than Clarence Thomas in serving what Hakeem Jeffries once described as an elite business class through the promotion of multinational corporations and the military complex. And look at what AIPAC will do to black members of Congress and black politicians who don't toe their line. They will destroy them like they destroyed Nina Turner in Ohio. Look at what they tried to do to Donna Edwards here right out in Prince George's County because she simply called for a Palestinian state. Look at what they plan to do to Jamal Bowman and Ilhan Omar. Nancy Pelosi was the predecessor of Hakeem Jeffries. She was protested at her home for her support for Israel's military assault on Gaza and refused an objection to a ceasefire. And what did she tell those protesters? That they are controlled by Russia and that their headquarters is located in China. This is not just tragic, it's criminal. And if South African lawyers who have prepared a filing against many of these elected officials who are presiding over this genocide have their way, they could go to trial. These are the genocide Democrats. And if AIPAC has its way in this election cycle, they will elect many, many more of these kind of figures while crushing any iteration of anti-war politics in the Democratic Party. They are unveiling a $100 million war chest, which will partly be spent through Democrats for a pro-Israel majority, which is one of its leaders has condemned this event, Ann Lewis. And then what are we left with? Are we left with a party worth supporting? Is there anything worth supporting there? I see this event as part of a wider rebellion in the party grassroots. I see it in Michigan, where 100,000 people voted uncommitted. In Minnesota, where 20% of all voters voted uncommitted in protest of the Gaza genocide. In Los Angeles, where Jewish Voices for Peace interrupted Adam Schiff's victory party, took over Adam Schiff's victory party. These are people who won't stand for the Democratic Party being a party of genocide Democrats. And look at how they're being attacked. They're being attacked for playing purity politics or something boutique. No, this is the moral issue of our time. This is the Holocaust of our time. This is the Trail of Tears of our time. This is the Middle Passage of our time. And what we are doing now to oppose it will be written in the annals of history, and it will say everything about us. You know what? This has to continue into Chicago. It has to continue into November. As long as this assault continues, and as long as these policies of supporting apartheid continue, then they must feel the heat. If, like me, you can't stand this, if you stand with the starving, the homeless, the dispossessed in Gaza, you must not let the genocide Democrats win. Thank you.
War is horrible, so why did the Palestinians initiate this war with their vicious attack on Israelis on October 7th?
Well, they didn't. They didn't. This war has been going on for 75 years. Israel initiated it in 1948 by ethnically cleansing 750,000 people. We must expel Arabs. We must expel Arabs and take their places.
And are we all Democrats here? Are we Democrats? I'm leaving. I'm leaving, and I will never be back. This is not a Democrat.
Okay.
Is the U.S.
We must expel Arabs and take their places, and if we have to use force, not to dispossess the Arabs of the Negev and Transjordan, but to guarantee our own right to settle in those places, then we have force at our disposal. David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, said that in 1937, and that's what they proceeded to do. The people in Gaza, this is what you need to understand. The people in Gaza, over 80% of them are refugees. Many of them are from a place called Majdal Asqalon in what is now southern Israel, in a city called Ashkelon. And they were dragged from their homes and driven from their homes, placed in prison camps, barbed wire prison camps, and then dumped in trucks in 1950 into the Gaza Strip where they would be permanently warehoused. And then Israel proceeded to move Arab, Jewish refugees and Russians into Ashkelon to prevent them from ever coming back and pass laws to prevent Arabs, Palestinians from being able to return to their homes. 750,000 were ethnically cleansed. For 18 years, the remaining Palestinians, 100,000 were internally displaced inside Israel. The remaining were put under military rule. They were under military occupation until 1966. Then in 1967, Israel violently, in a war it initiated, occupies Gaza, occupies the West Bank, occupies the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights in East Jerusalem, and then invades Lebanon in 1982, attacking Palestinian refugees there, puts Gaza under siege in 2005. No one can get in or out without Israeli military permission. We must kill and kill all day, every day. That's according to Arnon Sofer, an Israeli government consultant who helped devise the siege of Gaza. For years, Israel would not allow certain chocolates and A2 paper into Gaza. And then they began these brutal military assaults, which they call mowing the lawn. Slaughtering a few people will leave Hamas intact, but teach them a lesson. And I talked to you about those assaults that took place on Gaza. So this didn't come out of a vacuum. You're not going to be able to hold people under siege, to cut them off from the world, and then expect them to just play along. And that doesn't mean that I celebrate what happened on October 7th. It should have never had to happen. The reason it happened is because of the Israel lobby here, the genocide Democrats and the genocide Republicans who deny the Palestinians any right to have rights. And it's the right to have rights that defines you as a citizen. They're citizens of nothing. And now we see what Israel really thinks of them, really thinks of their children. Gaza has become a graveyard for children, according to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. So this didn't start on October 7th, and it's not going to end when there's a ceasefire.
Max, about God Trump do if he were president, and what would the Republicans have done if they were in control?
Well, I think it would be similar. Trump said that he would say that he wants to smash Gaza, but I don't think he would be able to do anything different. I don't think there's anything Biden has done that exercised any U.S. leverage. Trump wouldn't either. But what we do know about Donald Trump is that he went rogue in many ways and went off script. There's a script that's handed to you when you come into the White House. It's the script Biden has been reading from his entire career, and Trump refused to follow it. He first refused to follow it at the Republican-Jewish coalition of Sheldon Adelson, who works with Haim Saban. He's dead, but his wife still runs his foundation. They control the Republican Party through donations. He was Trump's top donor. Before Adelson was donating to Trump, Trump said at this meeting, you guys are real estate, you're in real estate. You know how to make deals. I think we can make a deal between Israel and Palestine. And then they called Trump an anti-Semite for saying that. And then he signs on with the Adelson agenda, the Jared Kushner agenda. The rest is history. But Trump tried to broker peace on the Korean Peninsula. That was a heroic act. 80% of Koreans support peace, while the Democratic Party establishment attacked him and mocked him for doing that. People want to have their families reunited there. He sat down to discuss reducing intermediate ballistic missile stocks with Vladimir Putin, and CNN published a story claiming that Putin handed him a soccer ball with a hidden mic inside to spy on the president. And Rachel Maddow, night after night, said Trump was going to be impeached and arrested for his ties to Vladimir Putin. This is how it was received. This is how peacemaking and diplomacy was received. So Trump, when he comes back in, is going to be under even more pressure than he was before to read from the Beltway script. And I don't know why anyone was laughing about peace in Korea, because anyone in Korea, except for a few fanatics in the South, wants to see the peninsula united and wants to end this war, which was itself a U.S. genocide in which the North Korean population lost 20% of their population. Curtis LeMay, who was in charge of the aerial bombardment operation that leveled Pyongyang to the ground, said if we had lost the war, we would have been all tried as war criminals.
Max, this is our last question. Okay, it is 7 o'clock, but thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.